Dr. Kim Nari rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the glowing screens surrounding her workspace. The ancient data cores of Kethmoran hummed quietly in the background, their soft blue light casting strange shadows across the vast archive hall. She had been working for 12 hours straight, but something important was hidden in these old records. For 300 years, humans had lived as the youngest members of the Galactic Concordat. They were told they were lucky. Earth had been dying when the Alien Alliance found them and brought them into space. Humans were grateful to be saved from their poisoned planet and given new homes among the stars. At least that was what everyone believed. Nari pulled up another set of files on her holographic display. She was supposed to be studying how human culture had changed since joining the Concordat. But she kept finding strange things in the historical records. The dates did not match up. Some files talked about human ships in star systems years before. First contact was supposed to happen. Other records had huge gaps where information should be. She zoomed in on a star map from 500 years ago. According to this file, humans had built settlements in the Proxima system long before the Concordat arrived at Earth, but the official history said humans had never left. It's their home planet until the aliens rescued them. Why would the records lie? Heavy footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Nari looked up to see her supervisor walking toward her desk. Kethmik was tall and thin, with skin that looked like living crystal. His people, the Valtheri, had been part of the Concordat for thousands of years. To him, humans were still children who needed guidance. Dr. Kim, Kethmik said, his voice carrying disapproval, "Your research has gone beyond what you are allowed to study again." Nari minimized the star maps on her screen. "I'm just trying to understand why the timeline has problems," she said. "These files show human presence in systems that came before. Our first contact by decades. That does not matter." Kethmik's crystalline features hardened. "Your species kept very bad records in the old days. You cannot trust what primitive humans wrote down. Focus on your real work about cultural integration studies." The alien supervisor turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the quiet. Hall Nari watched him go, feeling frustrated and suspicious. This was not the first time he had stopped her from looking at old historical files. In fact, every time she found something that did not match the official story, Kethmik would tell her to stop investigating. Nari looked around the archive hall. 3 other human researchers worked at stations far across the room, she realized. Something disturbing. Last month, there had been 12 humans working here. Dr. Park had been reassigned to a cultural center on a farming world. Dr. Lee was moved to a teaching position on a mining colony. Dr. Cho now worked in a small library. On the edge of Concordat space, one by one, every human who asked difficult questions about history was quietly sent away to less important jobs. She was the only human researcher left who had access to the old files, and now she understood why. Nora activated a hidden program she had written weeks ago. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic interface as she began copying files to a secret partition in her personal storage device. The data transfer would take hours, but she had to risk it. If she was going to be reassigned soon, this might be her only chance to save the evidence. Warning lights blinked softly on her screen as the security system detected her unauthorized copying. Nari held her breath, but the lights turned green. After a few seconds, her program was working. It looked like normal research activity to the monitoring systems. Hours passed. Nari pretended to work on her official project, while thousands of historical files copied to her hidden storage. Star charts, military reports, population records, and communication logs all flowed into her secret database. The more she saw, the more worried she became. These were not the records of a primitive species that barely knew how to leave their home planet. These files showed a spacefaring civilization with advanced technology, large fleets of warships, and colonies spread across dozens of star systems. The humans in these records were not weak refugees waiting to be rescued. They were powerful enough to fight wars against the early Concordat and win. As the station's artificial night cycle began, Adi finally finished copying the files. She packed up her equipment and walked slowly back to her quarters, trying to look calm and normal. Inside, her heart was racing in her small apartment. Nari locked the door and activated privacy shields before opening the stolen files. What she found made her hand shake: reports of battles where human fleets defeated Concordat forces. Records of trade agreements between equals, not between masters and servants. Evidence of biological weapons used against human colonies. Files that talked about integration protocols and historical revision projects. The truth was clear and terrible. Humanity had not been rescued from a dying world. They had been conquered by an enemy that was too smart to fight them directly. The Concordat had destroyed human civilization slowly and carefully, then rewritten history to make themselves look like heroes instead of invaders. Nari stared at the evidence glowing on her screen. Someone had spent centuries making sure this truth stayed buried. But now she knew, and she had to decide what to do about it. 3 weeks had passed since Nari discovered the truth about humanity's hidden past. She had sent coded messages to other human researchers across the galaxy, looking for someone who might have found similar evidence. Only one person had replied with the right words that showed he knew what she was talking about. Park. Jihoon worked as a military historian on a Concordat defense platform that orbited the planet Kepler 440b. The space station was huge, with thousands of alien soldiers and workers living inside its metal walls. It was a dangerous place for humans to meet and share forbidden secrets. But Jihoon had found a way. Nari's transport ship docked at the station during the busy morning shift change. She walked through crowded corridors filled with different alien species, trying to look like just another human worker doing her job. Following Jihoon's directions, she found a maintenance section deep in the station's lower levels. Jihoon was waiting for her in a small room, hidden behind pipes and electrical cables. He was a thin man with tired eyes and careful movements. The room around him was filled with strange equipment that hummed quietly. "This chamber blocks all surveillance," Jihoon explained as he closed the heavy door behind her. "I built it myself over the past 2 years. We can speak freely here." The walls were covered with holographic displays showing star maps, ship designs, and military reports. Nari stared at the images in amazement. These were not the records of primitive humans learning to travel in space. These were the files of an advanced civilization with powerful technology. "Look at this," Jihoon whispered, pointing to a tactical display that showed human warships. "These are not simple vessels. These are advanced warships with weapons and shields that match what the Concordat uses today." Nari studied the ship designs carefully. The human vessels had sleek shapes and weapon systems that looked nothing like the basic transports humans were allowed to use now. "How many ships did we have?" she asked. "For 3,000 vessels." Jihoon replied, changing the display to show fleet numbers. "We controlled 12 complete star systems. Our colonies had hundreds of millions of people living on dozens of worlds." The records painted a picture that was completely different from what humans had been taught. Humanity had been a major power in the galaxy, not a weak species waiting to be rescued. The files showed battle reports from something called the Proxima Wars, where human fleets had fought Concordat forces for decades. "But how did we lose?" Nari asked, reading through the tactical reports. "These battles show that we were winning most of the fights." Jihoon's face became dark and angry. "We did not lose in battle," he said. "Look at these other files. Biological warfare reports, infrastructure destruction, political assassination records. They did not defeat us with honest fighting." He pulled up new displays that made Nari feel sick. Reports of engineered diseases that targeted human genetics. Records of sabotage operations that destroyed power plants and communication networks. Lists of human leaders who had died in suspicious accidents. "They destroyed us from the inside," Jihoon continued. "They made our civilization collapse slowly, then came to Earth as saviors when we were too weak to resist." The dying planet story was a lie. They poisoned our world themselves. Nari felt anger burning in her chest. Everything humans believed about their past was false. They had been proud and strong, but their enemies had been too clever and patient to fight them directly. The most shocking discovery came when Jihoon showed her a list of coordinates. 17 human colonies that were supposedly lost to natural disasters over the centuries, he said. According to these hidden records, at least 7 of them are still inhabited, cut off from Earth and the rest of human space. but still alive. Still alive? Nari stared at the coordinates in disbelief. There are hidden human colonies that survived. Millions of our people living in secret, Ji-hoon confirmed. They have been alone for centuries, probably thinking that Earth and all other humans were destroyed. Before Nari could ask more questions, red warning lights began flashing throughout the chamber. An alarm voice spoke in the Concordat's official language, announcing security alerts across multiple sectors. Ji-hoon quickly checked his monitoring equipment. His face went pale as he read the incoming reports. Concordat security forces are raiding human research facilities across 3 sectors. Someone discovered our investigation. The sound of heavy boots echoed in the corridors outside their hidden room. Security teams were searching the maintenance areas, getting closer to their location. The Hanuel colony, Ji-hoon said urgently as he activated a data transfer to Nara's neural implant. These coordinates will take you to one of the surviving colonies. It is our only chance to escape and warn them about what we have learned. The coordinates burned into Nari's memory as armed voices grew louder in the hallways. Ji-hoon grabbed a small device from his equipment and pressed it into her hands. Emergency transport controller, he explained quickly. There is a cargo ship in docking bay 7. I programmed it to accept your biometrics. The chamber door began to shake as security forces tried to break through. Ji-hoon opened a hidden panel on the floor that led to maintenance tunnels below. Go, he said, pushing Nari toward the opening. Find the colony. Tell them the truth about what happened to us. Nari dropped into the tunnel just as the door exploded behind her. She crawled through the dark passage as the sound of weapons fire echoed above. Ji-hoon had bought her time with his life. She would not waste his sacrifice. The stolen transport ship. Magangwa shook violently as it dropped out of hyperspace near the edge of a swirling purple nebula. Nari gripped her seat as the ship's system stabilized after 2 weeks of desperate flight through the galaxy's outer regions. Beside her, Ji-hoon checked their coordinates one more time, his face tense with worry. This is the location, he said quietly. But I do not see anything here except gas clouds and empty space. They had barely escaped the Concordat defense station alive. Ji-hoon had been wounded in the firefight, but he had managed to reach the cargo ship before security forces could capture them. For 14 days, they had jumped from system to system, always staying ahead of the patrol ships hunting them. Now they floated in the darkness near a dense nebula, following coordinates that were 300 years old. The hidden colony might be dead. It might never have existed at all. Or worse, it might have joined the Concordat willingly. Suddenly, space around them began to change. What had looked like empty vacuum shimmered and shifted, revealing the outline of something massive, hidden in the nebula's swirling gases. A space station slowly became visible, bigger than anything Nari had ever seen. The design was clearly human, but it used technology that looked decades more advanced than anything on Earth. Defensive systems are locking onto us, Ji-hoon reported, watching his scanner with growing alarm. Those are not Concordat weapons. These are something completely new. Red targeting beams swept across their small ship. Whatever was pointing weapons at them had firepower that made Concordat battleships look like toys. Nari realized they were completely helpless if the station decided to destroy them. A voice suddenly spoke through their communication system, clear and strong. The words were in perfect Korean, spoken with an accent that sounded like home. Unknown vessel, identify yourself immediately. Edit your business in this system. Ta-da. Nari's heart jumped with hope and fear. These were humans, but they sounded nothing like the weak and grateful humans she knew from Concordat space. These people spoke with the confidence of warriors. This is Dr. Kim Nari and Colonel Park Ji-hoon, she replied into the communicator. We are requesting sanctuary. Carry proof of the Concordat's deception about our people's true history. Long minutes passed in silence. Nari imagined armed humans on the station debating whether to trust them or kill them. Finally, the voice returned. You will be escorted to docking bay 12. Any hostile action will result in your immediate destruction. Small fighter ships emerged from hidden bays in the station, surrounding their transport with weapons ready. The fighters were sleek and deadly, clearly built for war. They guided the Magangwa through a maze of defense platforms toward the massive station. Hours later, Nari and Jihoon stood in a command center that took their breath away. The room was huge, with displays showing star maps that covered half the galaxy. Hundreds of humans worked at control stations, coordinating operations that spanned dozens of worlds. These people looked strong and confident, nothing like the submissive humans in Concordat space. Admiral Lee Minho was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. He studied Nari and Jihoon carefully as they stood before his command chair, surrounded by armed guards. "You claim to have proof," Admiral Lee said. "Show me." Nari activated her neural implant and projected the stolen files into the room's holographic system. Battle reports, historical records, and evidence of biological warfare filled the air around them. The command center fell silent as the admiral and his officers studied the information. "These files confirm what we have suspected for centuries," Admiral Lee said finally. "The colony has not merely survived since the fall, we have thrived. 30 million humans call this system home, descendants of the fleet that refused to surrender when our civilization was destroyed." Nari stared at the displays around her in amazement. The screens showed hidden bases throughout the galaxy, secret shipyards, and communication networks that the Concordat knew nothing about. "We have been preparing for this day," Admiral Lee continued, gesturing to the tactical displays. 17 colonies like this one, 43 deep space installations, and over 2 million operatives infiltrating Concordat worlds. "We have been waiting for the right moment to strike back." Jihoon looked at the military preparations with understanding. "In fear, you have been planning a war," he said. Admiral Lee's expression hardened. "We have been planning justice. Your evidence is the final piece we need to expose their lies to every species in the galaxy. But first, we must survive their response." As if his words had summoned disaster, alarm sirens began blaring throughout the command center. Red warning. Lights flashed as officers ran to their stations. A young communications officer turned to the admiral with panic in her voice. "Sir, long-range sensors are detecting a Concordat battle fleet dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge."
Albert.
"Ships, including 3 dreadnoughts." Nari felt her blood turn to ice. "They followed us," she whispered in horror. "We led them right to you." Admiral Lee stood from his command chair and smiled grimly. There was no fear in his eyes, only the cold satisfaction of a hunter who had finally found his prey. "Come," he said, his voice carrying to every person in the command center. "It is time the galaxy learned what humans are truly capable of when we stop pretending to be weak." The hidden colony prepared for battle, and Nari realized that the war for humanity's freedom was about to begin. The massive Concordat battleship Victory moved through space at the head of 46 other warships, its hull gleaming with the confidence of 300 years of unchallenged power. On the bridge, Commander Vextel studied the tactical displays with satisfaction.
Oh.
His crystalline features reflected the light from the screens as he prepared to destroy another human terrorist cell.
Oh.
"Primitive rebels hiding in a nebula," he said to his officers. "This will be over quickly. Prepare to eliminate all traces of their existence." Far below in the nebula, Admiral Lee Minho stood in Hanil Station's command center, watching the enemy fleet approach. Around him, hundreds of human officers worked at their stations with calm efficiency. These were not the frightened refugees the Concordat expected to find. These were the descendants of warriors who had fought the galaxy's greatest power to a standstill centuries ago. "Distance to enemy fleet," Admiral Lee asked. 2 million kilometers in closing, reported the tactical officer. "They will be in weapons range in 15 minutes. Admiral Lee turned to the communications station where a young woman with determined eyes waited for his orders. "Officer Song Yuna, activate the Lazarus network." "Yes, sir. Activating now." Cross. The galaxy, hidden transmission arrays that had been built in secret over 3 centuries, suddenly came online. The network had been carefully placed on asteroids, abandoned stations, and hidden bases throughout Concordat space. Now all of them began broadcasting the same signal at the same time. The evidence that Nari and Jehun had risked their lives, together, combined with 300 years of secretly preserved records, began flooding every communication system in the galaxy. The true history of humanity's conquest, the lies about first contact, and proof of the Concordat's systematic oppression spread like wildfire across thousands of worlds. On Veltar Prime, the crystal beings who ruled the Concordat watched their communication networks in growing panic. The carefully maintained lies that had kept their empire stable for centuries were crumbling in real time. Emergency meetings were called as planetary governors demanded explanations that their leaders could not give. In the mining colonies of the Kepler sector, the enslaved Regelians stopped their work as the broadcasts reached their underground cities. For generations, they had been told that their protective custody was necessary because they were too dangerous to live freely. Now they learned the truth. They were prisoners because they were too valuable as workers to be allowed to leave. Same revelation was happening on dozens of worlds. Species that had been convinced they were inferior learned that their histories had been rewritten, their technological capabilities had been suppressed. Their true potential had been stolen and hidden from them by masters who feared what they might become if they knew the truth. The Concordat fleet reached weapons range and opened fire without warning. Hundreds of energy beams and missile strikes hit the nebula where they expected to find a weak human outpost. Commander Vextel smiled as his weapons lit up the gas clouds with brilliant explosions. Direct hits confirmed, his weapons officer reported. No survivors possible. But the smile faded from Vexel's face as his sensors showed something impossible. The human station was still there, completely undamaged. Massive energy shields had absorbed the entire attack without even flickering.
How is this possible?
He demanded. Our intelligence said these humans had primitive technology. His answer came in the form of weapons fire that cut through his flagship's armor like it was made of paper. Hidden defense platforms emerged from the nebula around them, revealing guns that made Concordat artillery look like ancient weapons. The technological gap that the enemy had expected was completely reversed. Humanity had spent 3 centuries advancing their technology while the Concordat had grown lazy and complacent. The rebels were not using primitive weapons. They were using weapons that were decades ahead of anything the Empire possessed. 3. Concordat ships exploded in brilliant fireballs as the hidden platforms concentrated their fire. The remaining fleet tried to retreat, but more weapons emerged from the nebula to surround them. They were trapped in a killing field that they had walked into blindly. "Sir," Communications Officer Song Yuna called out from her station, "we are receiving confirmations from 17 star systems. All the hidden colonies are responding to Lazarus Protocol." Admiral Lee nodded as he watched more enemy ships die. On his tactical display, signal all units across the galaxy. Operation Restoration is now active. Broadcast our message to every human in Concordat space. Tell them it is time to come home. The galaxy-wide transmission reached secret cells on hundreds of worlds. Humans who had lived their entire lives believing they were weak and inferior suddenly learned the truth about their heritage. They were the descendants of warriors who had once challenged the greatest power in the galaxy and nearly won. On factory worlds, human workers stopped their machines and looked up at the sky with new understanding. In research stations, human scientists realized that their capabilities had been deliberately limited. In military bases, human soldiers understood that they had been used as expendable troops while their true strength was hidden from them. Message was simple and clear. You are not inferior. You are not weak. You are the children of humanity's greatest heroes. Rise up, come home, take back what was stolen from you. And across the galaxy, humanity began to remember what it meant to be angry. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Hanyul changed everything. Dr. Kim Nari stood on the bridge of the massive flagship Taigok, watching as hundreds of human warships moved through space toward their final target. The war that had started with her discovery in an archive had spread across the galaxy faster than anyone had imagined. The bridge around her buzzed with quiet activity. As officers coordinated the largest military operation in human history, through the main viewing screen, She could see Concordat Prime growing larger as they approached. The capital world of their former oppressors looked small and vulnerable now, surrounded by the burning wreckage of its defensive fleet. The war had been swift and terrible. 3 centuries of secret preparation had given humanity advantages that their enemies could not match. While the Concordat had grown comfortable and lazy with power, the hidden human colonies had spent every day preparing for this moment. But the real victory had not come from superior weapons or better tactics. It had come from the truth itself. When the Lazarus Network broadcasts reached every world in Concordat space, the Empire's political structure had collapsed like a house built on sand. The lies that held their government together for hundreds of years crumbled in a matter of days. Species after species learned that their histories had been rewritten, their capabilities hidden, their true strength stolen from them. The Regellians were the first to rebel, breaking their chains in the mining colonies and seizing Concordat weapons. The Velthari crystal beings split into civil war as those who knew the truth fought against those who had helped create the lies. The peaceful Andromedans discovered that their pacifist culture had been artificially created to make them easier to control. Within weeks, the rebellion had spread to 1,000 worlds. Combined fleets of freed species overwhelmed the Concordats. Scattered defenses, the totalitarian government that had ruled the galaxy for centuries, found itself fighting enemies on every front, with no allies left to trust. Admiral Lee said into her communicator as she watched the last Concordat defense platforms power down their weapons. "We are in position over the capital. Proceed with the final broadcast," came Admiral Lee's reply from his command ship. "Let the galaxy hear the truth one more time." Nari walked to the communication station and activated the galaxy-wide network that had started this revolution. Her image appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds as she stood on the bridge with the defeated Concordat fleet visible behind her through the viewing screen. "To every being who has suffered under the lies of the Concordat," she began, her voice carrying to billions of listeners across the galaxy, "today we restore the truth they tried to bury. History will no longer be written by those who fear it. The galaxy belongs to all its children, not just those who would rule from shadows." On the screens behind her, the last Concordat dreadnought slowly powered down its weapons and raised surrender flags. The sight was broadcast to every world, showing that the Empire's military power was finally broken. "We are humanity," Nari continued, thinking of all the humans who had lived and died, believing they were weak and inferior. "And we remember everything. Those who tried to erase us from history have learned that the erased can still write their own ending." The bridge crew watched in silence as their captain spoke to the galaxy. Many of them had been born in the hidden colonies, raised on stories of the war that would someday come. Others were refugees who had escaped from Concordat worlds during the rebellion. All of them understood that this moment would be remembered for thousands of years. "The old empire is dead," Nari said as she looked directly into the camera. "In its place, we will build something better. A new galactic assembly founded on principles of truth and equality. Every species will know their real history, their actual capabilities, their true potential. Never again will knowledge be used as a weapon against the innocent." As the broadcast ended, the Tygok and the rest of the human fleet entered orbit around the liberated capital world. Below them, Concordat Prime was already changing. The crystal towers that had housed the Empire's government were being occupied by representatives from dozens of freed species. The propaganda centers that had spread lies for centuries were being converted into schools that would teach real history. Nari walked to the viewing screen and looked down at the world that had once been the center of galactic oppression. She thought about her journey from confused researcher to revolutionary leader. 6 months ago, she had been a loyal citizen who trusted her government completely. Now, she was helping to build a new galaxy, based on truth instead of lies. The Concordat had made one fatal error in their centuries of rule. They had assumed that controlling the story meant controlling reality. They had believed that if they could rewrite history, they could change what had actually happened. But they had forgotten something important about truth. They had forgotten that some stories refuse to stay buried. no matter how deep you dig the grave, as the sun set on Concordat Prime. It also rose on a new age for the galaxy, an age where every species would know who they really were and what they were truly capable of achieving. The war was over. The truth had won.